The Enterprise and Farragut lie crippled. A powerful, mysterious enemy hides deadly surprises, and Kirk's first command could end in disaster. Let's break down every detail and twist you might have missed. Well, hey everyone, I'm Nick and welcome back to Sci-Finatics. Well, today we're talking about episode 6 of season 3 of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, entitled The Sehlat Who Ate Its Tail. This is probably my favourite episode of the season so far. It mixed up a couple of Star Trek classic themes, I think. The disaster situation, where the ship is absolutely crippled and the crew must overcome all odds to get it back up and running again. We've had episodes of TNG like Disaster. We've had episodes of Voyager like the Year of Hell episodes. We've had Damage in Enterprise and Starship Down in DS9. All episodes where the ship is absolutely crippled and they've got to work hard to get it restored before everything goes bad and they lose life support and whatever. They're always very stressful episodes, I think, where they have to manage umpteen different resources and ship systems to get things back up and running again. And they took that aspect and combined it with the huge, powerful, unknown race, a bit like V'Ger in Star Trek The Motion Picture, the absolute mammoth villain or mammoth foe that seems to be completely impossible to defeat. And also the aspect of Star Trek Motion Picture where the mammoth threat that was V'Ger turns out to be something very small and human in the form of the Voyager probe. And we had a similar ending to this episode. So I loved the fact that they married up the disaster story with the huge unstoppable enemy story and also having a bit of a twist in the end. I think that all worked really, really well. And I'd say this episode is one of my favourites this season so far. So let's break it all down and see what this episode had to offer. The episode starts with a first officer's log from the Farragut, courtesy of Kirk, and they're doing a survey of Helicon Gamma, which is an uninhabited world outside of Federation space. We finally find out that the Farragut has a captain named Varel. The first captain of the Farragut was Garavik, that was killed a few years prior due to that situation that Kirk spoke about in original series. He was on the phaser station or something and he was a bit slow to respond and the captain got killed. So it seems that Captain Varel, this Vulcan female captain, has taken over from Garavik. And it doesn't seem like Kirk is particularly happy with Varel's captaincy style. He's a bit frustrated with her. She likes to play it straight, do everything by the book and everything. And that's not really Kirk's way of operating. He likes to be a bit more fly by the seat of your pants mode. So it's frustrating his aspirations. I love the fact that one of the comments that Kirk makes to Varel at the beginning of this episode is about taking some risks and doing some things and saying risk is why we're here, which harks back to the famous risk is our business speech that Kirk gives in original series. Suddenly there's a massive impact on the planet and the planet is looking like it's going to be completely destroyed. The Farragut gets absolutely slammed by a shockwave from the planet exploding. There's mass casualties. Varel is severely injured, the captain, and the planet gets destroyed, which is one hell of a teaser. Just getting you into the episode, I think there have been some classic teasers over the years in Star Trek episodes that really catch your attention. And I think this definitely caught your attention because there's nothing bigger than a planet being destroyed to go, okay, now we mean business. The Enterprise beams in as a rescue effort and the away team boards of the Farragut. We soon realise that all communications are down and the away team gets to the bridge with Kirk in command. They make a point of going back to this situation, talking about all communications are being jammed whenever they're in the vicinity of the scavenger ship, I think, which is going to then link back to the necessity later on in the episode to find some 20th century retro technology to help solve their problems. During this scene on the bridge, when they all meet up with Kirk and everything and they're going over the situation, there's a little look that Latta and Kirk share, which I don't know whether it's a bit of a wink wink nudge nudge look or it's a little bit of, oh, this is a bit of an awkward look because Latta's got something going with Spock at the moment, but Kirk probably wouldn't know about that. But there's just that little acknowledgement that something between the two of them. Kirk talks to Pike over the comms and they acknowledge the threat that they face here is one of absolute phenomenal size. A ship that has enough tractor beam power or repulsor beam power to inflict this most catastrophic devastation on a planet must be one of the largest recorded ships in Starfleet history. And we soon get to find out about this concept that Lan talks about, which is the concept of the destroyer of worlds, which is like the galactic boogeyman, that is this story that's been passed around generation to generation about this mysterious ship that just exists on the edge of the galaxy and so forth. The scary stories that parents tell their kids before bed, which is good for setting up this whole history of just how long this threat has been present for. This massive scavenger ship turns up, and then essentially it looks like it has almost like a skull face on the front of it, which opens up its jaws and swallows the Enterprise whole by latching on these grapplers and everything to it. It's quite unlike anything we've seen before. I think it's almost one of those ships that strikes fear into your heart. It's a bit like the opening to the 2009 J.J. Abrams Star Trek film, where the USS Kelvin is confronted with that massive spiky Romulan ship. They didn't kind of explain it in the film, but I think it was like Romulan tech fused with some Borg tech, and it started off being a smaller ship that it just grew and grew and grew, which is like the same concept of this scavenger ship. Like it was an original ship of one size, and it's just been built upon and built upon and built upon and built upon, a bit like what Packlids sort of did, I think, in Lower Decks. They were a scavenger race that would piece together enhancements to their ship by adding different bits and pieces to it. So the Enterprise gets pulled into the scavenger ship, and the scavenger ship goes to warp. Varel, the Vulcan captain of the Farragut, was beamed to the Enterprise for medical aid, so it would appear that Kirk is in command of the Farragut. Which you can see it's a bit like, as they say, be careful what you wish for. He was clearly very keen to take command and to maybe boss people around a little bit, and wasn't happy with how Captain Varel was handling the situation and everything, and now he's got what he asks for by becoming the captain of the ship, but it's in very trying circumstances, and it's like, oh geez, I shouldn't have spoken too soon now. I didn't really want this much pressure quite so suddenly. One of those be careful what you wish for scenarios. We get a little bit more insight into this history that's gone down over the ages of the destroyer of worlds, and Lan talks about the Asarslik, a boogeyman race that outer colonies talked about. He also mentioned the word Astrovore, and everybody's got a story about it. Mitchell's got a story that she's heard. Ortega has got a story she's heard. It goes a long way to cementing the fact that this is something that's been around for a while, that parents have told their kids about, captains have told their crew about, this mysterious ship that strikes fear into the hearts of other captains and ships. The Boogeyman, or El Chupacabra, or something like that. Kirk does a captain's log. He's a little bit stressed and uneasy with the situation he's found himself in. And they soon determine that, there's, for example, a Klingon D7 battlecruiser as part of the debris in terms of what ships and so forth this scavenger ship has consumed. And Kirk's expectations on the crew seem somewhat unrealistic. Kirk has got this command style where he's all guns blazing. He's asking Scotty to give him maximum warp power on the engines and everything so they can overtake the scavenger ship to get in front of it, because it's going to destroy a colony. So I love the fact that Kirk has started up this notion of Scotty as the miracle worker, or trying to inspire him to be a miracle worker. And which Scotty is a bit uneasy about. It's like you can only be a miracle worker within certain boundaries. If your ship is an absolute trashed piece of garbage, you can't expect maximum warp for a great length of time. And Kirk refused to take his advice and just has to fulfill his orders. The crew on Enterprise has gone into security mode. They've changed into their tactical outfits there, with the teams on the prowl on the Enterprise. And Piers Engineering's flooded with a toxic gas due to the umbilicals that are connected from the scavenger ship and that are draining resources from the Enterprise. I thought in this episode, oh good, they've put the umbilical through to engineering. We're going to actually finally get back to engineering in this episode. But no, we're back in the science lab again. Like every episode this season, we're in the science lab. It's like, I just want to get back to engineering for once. It's like, this would have been a perfect opportunity to have the umbilical feeding into one of the warp core or something like that, or one of those glowing terminals in engineering. I feel like they're really avoiding going into engineering this season, almost like, oh, they've trashed the engineering set in preference for the science lab set. Something. The engineering set was always so impressive, and it wasn't used for anything else in this episode. Like, it wasn't like used for a planetary landscape like it was in the previous episode, being an alien temple. So they could have gone back to their usual engineering set on the AR wall for this episode, but no, we're back in science lab again. Kirk and Scotty work out that the scavengers, basically what they're doing is mine this resource called aldentium, which apparently the scavenger ship uses for fuel. The Sullivan's planet, which is an inhabited pre-warp civilization, is basically next on their flight path, and if they don't do something soon, it's probably going to consume that whole planet. So Kirk orders Scotty to give the maximum warp to get there first, against Scotty's better judgment. Meanwhile, on the Enterprise, Ortega is pretty adamant that there's not enough power to steer the ship, and we get an idea via Pelia, who says she's glad to have lived through the 80s, to try to solve their communications problem. We've got the security team there in breathing gear approaching the umbilical, and they realise there's some of the scavengers on board, and one of the security officers is hit by them, and they have to flee. The Farragut's at warp, trying to overtake the scavengers, and Kirk seems to be very pleased with himself that look how good I am. I'm the captain now. I made the right choice. It's like, just don't speak too soon, dude. You've still got 2 hours to go before you get to the planet, and you don't want to jinx it. And of course, he jinxes it. I like the moment here on the bridge where he's walking around the captain's chair and taking a look at it from a couple of different angles and everything, and he just finally feels comfortable enough to sit down in it. It reminds me a little bit of Rayner in Discovery. He was always a bit reluctant to sit in the captain's chair until he felt like he'd earned it back. The warp core goes down, the Farragut's dead in the water. Kirk asked too much of Scotty and the engines, and now basically through these bad choices they're completely crippled. And Kirk has a bit of a freak out. He needs to ponder it, he storms off, everyone's asking him for answers and he just doesn't have them. He just feels like he's a bit out of his depth. And I love the beginnings of the whole Kirk and Spock dynamic here, in terms of Spock saying, I need to be the one, I'm a bit less emotional and a bit less panicky than the rest of you, so Kirk needs a bit of a clear head to give him some advice. I'll go and give him a bit of a pep talk. So I love the fact that we're seeing the seed grow of this dynamic between Kirk and Spock. Back on the Enterprise, phasers are not working against these invaders. Our red shirt, who got shot earlier, dies. We're on a bit of a roll here. We're at 2 red shirt deaths in as many episodes. We had one die last week and we've got another one dying this week. So we seem to be developing a bit of a theme for red shirts copying it. Pike and Lan make it to the port galley and use the old shooting of the booze bottle, catching it on fire to escape the scavengers. I like the fact that this episode has almost got a bit of everything in it. We've got a bit of tension, a bit of character development. We've got some phaser action going on. We've got some ship-to-ship action going on. It had a good amount of every element I think you wanted in an exciting episode. I love that we got to see Pelia's quarters, where she goes in and her quarters are like a old antique shop where she's pulling out old things from boxes, and she's got like an old Atari console and everything in there, and trying to find the old phones to analog wire the Enterprise so they can communicate with each other. Spock and Kirk have their little pep talk where he's commenting on how James's brother Sam, Kirk, talks about him and so forth, trying to puff him up a little bit, give him a bit of confidence back. And Kirk mentions this old metaphor that her mum used to say to him about the dog who caught the car, which then gets to our episode title, which Spock mentions that this is a similar concept on Vulcan called the Sehlat who ate its tail. It's a bit like what we were saying before in terms of the dog is always barking and trying to chase the car and everything, full of bravado and brashness and eagerness and everything. And then when the dog finally catches up to the car and grabs hold of it, it's like, okay, I've got the car now, what am I supposed to do with it? I didn't think that far ahead, which mirrors Kirk's expectations and desire to become captain sooner than maybe he was ready to be. Kirk comes back with some renewed vigour, and he has some ideas to make the Farragut seem like it's overflowing with aldentium so that it becomes an attractive target for the scavengers, and then how to use that information against them. Pike and Lan have a hand-to-hand fight with the scavengers and disable their phaser blockers. They're able to disintegrate one of them and severely injure the second one. Pike almost gets choked because of his breathing apparatus isn't functioning properly. And then when faced with a situation where Pike's almost about to get vaporized by the attacking scavengers, the scavenger fails to shoot, which then starts to raise the question is, why didn't he kill Pike? Why did he not fire? And this is when you first start to realise, there's something more to these scavengers than what they seem. And this mystery about their motivations and who in fact they are starts to come into it. I like the fact that in order to get the umbilical detached from the Enterprise, Pike and La'an have to use the old, as Scotty would call it, the souring of the milk technique. I love Scotty's way he described that back in that Relics episode when he was talking to Geordi in TNG about the space-borne entity, to how to get it off the ship. You got to sour the milk. Whatever they're sucking out of the ship, you got to sour it so that it disconnects. I would have almost liked to see them ask Scotty for help and him suggesting that idea, I think, because we know Scotty penned that term of souring the milk as a solution thing in that TNG episode. So it would have been nice if somehow they would have connected Scotty to that moment. I think just hark that back to what Scotty said to Geordi in TNG. Pelia hooks up all the phones and so forth to the Enterprise, and this actually worked okay. Like, I was a bit worried when I first saw the trailer for this episode for this season, where you think, oh no, it's going to be some weird quirky thing. Because I've had a few quirky episodes this season so far where you go, oh, is it a bit too much quirkiness this season? And I think the use of the phones for communication and everything, I think, was just enough quirkiness, not to be entertaining, but not enough to be overwhelming, I think. So I liked the fact that they had to use some of this old tech that Pelia had lying around in her quarters to solve their problem. I think that worked well, and little references that Pelia would make, like that she used to be a roadie for the Grateful Dead, I think it was, which was funny, which Ortega then confuses with, I didn't know your people could speak to the dead. So yeah, there's a few funny little moments in there which worked well too. The phones get connected and we have to do a very clunky series where Ortegas will give directions to Mbenga and a number one to activate the thrusters in different orders. You're saying, give us 70% or 80%, and they had these old joysticks just to try to maneuver the ship, and it's like, this is very imprecise, and it wasn't working all that effectively. The scavenger ship arrives and goes after the Farragut, which was some cool little evasive maneuvers around the ship there, and they end up detaching the nacelles, which disable the scavenger ship somehow. Not quite sure how the detaching of the nacelles worked to disable them, but we'll just go with that. I think that was just one of those moments where we go, okay, just like suspend your disbelief just a little bit there for a few minutes. La'an and Pike managed to sour the proverbial milk with the umbilical, which disconnects, and Una ends up venting oxygen from the airlock to help with thrusters that weren't quite working effectively to get the Enterprise out of the scavenger ship. Seeing as how phasers didn't seem to work before and they seemed to be shielded in some way, the Farragut flies close enough to shoot photon torpedoes inside the mouth of the ship, bypassing their shields and everything, which I think, whether it ignites some of the fuel and everything from the attached fuel lines and whatever that were attached to the Enterprise and everything, which then ignites, and we get the massive scavenger ship exploding there, quite close to the Enterprise and Farragut. I was like, oh Jesus, that's a pretty big ship blowing up in quite close proximity to the Enterprise and the Farragut. Like, I hope they're okay, because they were already pretty crippled, and it was a pretty big explosion. So yeah, that was a bit of a tricky one, I think, to get out of, but they managed to just avoid any extra damage. Pike and La'an tracked down the scavenger on board, and they also revealed that 7,000 life signs were in the debris, but they couldn't transport anyone because of too much debris and much interference to transport. And we soon find out that our scavengers are human. I think, how are they human? And why are they human? What's going on here? And then we get a bit of a history lesson about a ship that launched in the mid-21st century, a colony ship that disappeared, was lost with many descendants. They lived in generations aboard this vessel, and they went to every extreme to survive, even if that meant destroying planets. So this was one of those, oh wow, oh crap moments where you just go, oh geez, what did we just do? Like, we just destroyed a ship full of human beings that have been travelling the galaxy for a century. So it had one of those endings a little bit like motion picture, where you think that the big bad foe is some horrible evil alien hell-bent on killing everybody, but it turns out they're just a bunch of people in a ship that have just been struggling to survive and have maybe gone to some unsavoury practices to keep their ship running, keep themselves alive and keep them going over such a long period of time. Although it does beg the question, well, why haven't they reached out? If they know that human beings are now flying around the galaxy in the form of the Federation on Federation starships, why they haven't reached out to try to reintegrate. We don't know what they were like personally. We don't know whether they were just all like pirates and just brutal and had become very jaded and very cynical and ruthless over the years of struggling to survive. But the guy who was under the helmet did look like quite a nicely groomed young man with a nice neat mustache and clear complexion. He didn't look like a hideous, horrible, homeless, pirate, animalistic person that would murder you at the first chance that he got. I'm kind of glad they left that element up to your imagination a little bit. I think just wondering what these people must have been like that we never really got to meet. And Kirk no doubt feels bad about what he did, but that gives him a bit of a pep talk about the responsibilities of command and living with his choices and everything. And it was a really nice moment, I thought, to end the episode on, where these two just talk about the pros and cons of command and how to live with your decisions. And I really enjoyed this episode. I think I would have to say it's probably one of my favourites this season so far. Had a bit of everything, had a bit of ship-to-ship action. We had some phaser fights, we had some heartfelt moments, some tension and stress and trying to get out of life-threatening predicaments, a foe of massive scale and a twist at the end. It had a bit of everything this episode. What did you guys think? Did you like it? Leave your thoughts in the comment section and we'll get chatting about this episode. As always, guys, if you haven't subscribed to Sci-Finatics yet, be sure to click on that big subscribe button and click on the notification bell to stay current and up to date with all the latest videos coming out from the channel. And also be sure to check out the merch in the merch store. 20% sale on at the moment. Be sure to check out that. Pick yourself up a t-shirt, 20% off. Get a great bargain and help support the channel at the same time. I'll be back soon with the next video. See you guys then.